Funerals can be unsettling for children. The hushed voices, the heavy air, the finality of it all, it's a lot for a young mind to process. But no one expected what came out of Adam's mouth that day. As he stood at the front of the room, small hands clasped together, staring at the closed casket, his voice broke through the silence like a crack in glass. "Daddy is still alive." At first, no one reacted. People assumed it was the confused rambling of a grieving child, struggling to accept what had happened. But for Officer Trent, those words weren't just a child's imagination. They were a warning. Trent had known Adam's father, Joseph, for decades. They met in college, shared years of memories, and though life eventually pulled them in different directions, the connection had never truly faded. When news of Joseph's death reached him, it felt sudden, too sudden. There were no details, no illness, no accident. Just the simple message that he was gone. At the funeral, something had already felt off. The casket was closed. Not unusual, but no one, not even Joseph's own mother, had been allowed to see the body. When someone asked, Rosalie, Joseph's wife, simply shook her head, saying the coroner had advised against it. She didn't cry. She didn't speak much. She stood by the casket with a blank expression, clutching her son's hand like she was holding on to the last thread of her sanity. But now, after Adam's sudden outburst, that thread seemed to unravel. The room had frozen. No one dared speak. Rosalie knelt down and whispered something in Adam's ear, ushering him away. The tension lingered like a storm cloud, and Trent couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a child's imagination. He decided to take a closer look. Pulling a few strings, he filed for access to Joseph's death certificate. It was a simple request on paper, but it took longer than it should have. When the court order finally came through, he headed straight to the coroner's office. The coroner, a gaunt man with tired eyes and a coffee-stained shirt, looked startled when Trent arrived. "I'm here about Joseph Mitchell," Trent said, handing over the order. "I'd like to see the death certificate." The coroner blinked, then disappeared into the back. Minutes passed. When he returned, he wasn't holding anything. "This looks bad," he muttered. "But I can't find it." Trent's jaw tightened. "What do you mean, you can't find it?" The coroner shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know. It's not in the system. It's not in the files. It's like it never existed." A missing death certificate was more than a clerical error. It was a red flag. Trent left the office, his mind spinning. Without documentation, there was no official proof that Joseph was dead at all. He drove straight to Rosalie's house. He wasn't sure what he was expecting, but he knew he had to speak with Adam. Rosalie answered the door, visibly startled to see a police officer standing there. She crossed her arms tightly over her chest. "Can I speak with Adam?" Trent asked gently. "He's resting," she replied, her tone guarded. "It'll only take a minute." There was a long pause. Then, over Rosalie's shoulder, Adam appeared in the hallway. He looked up at Trent, calm and curious. Rosalie hesitated, then stepped aside slightly. Trent crouched down, trying to appear as non-threatening as possible. "Adam, can I ask you something?" The boy nodded. "Why did you say your daddy is still alive?" Adam didn't answer right away. He looked down at his feet, then up at Trent again. His eyes were clear, steady. "Because I saw him," he said. Rosalie moved quickly, pulling her son behind her. "That's enough," she said, her voice sharp now, almost panicked. Trent didn't argue. He had seen enough. The look on her face told him more than any words could. She was afraid. Not of him, but of the truth. He slipped his card into her hand before she closed the door. "Call me," he said, "if you remember anything, anything at all." That night, Trent sat at his kitchen table, the lights off, the house quiet except for the ticking of a clock on the wall. He turned Joseph's name over and over in his mind. A dead man without a certificate. A closed casket no one was allowed to open. A boy claiming to have seen his father alive. He didn't sleep much. By morning, something had shifted inside him. He drove back to Rosalie's house, more determined than ever to find the truth. This time, when she answered the door, she didn't try to hide her surprise or her unease. "What now?" she asked, holding the door only half open. "I need to know what's going on, Rosalie," Trent said firmly. "I don't think Joseph is dead. And I don't think you believe it either." She didn't respond, just stared at him, breathing slowly. Then finally, she stepped back and opened the door. "You'd better come in," she said. Rosalie hesitated at first, unsure whether to let Officer Trent into her home. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty, and her posture suggested both caution and weariness. But after a long pause, and perhaps sensing that she could no longer carry the weight of secrecy alone, she stepped aside and allowed him in. They sat quietly in the living room. The air was heavy with unspoken truths. Trent didn't waste time. He brought up the missing death certificate almost immediately. Rosalie didn't flinch. In fact, she seemed almost numb to the mention of it, her expression unreadable. "Nothing about Joseph's death has felt right," she finally said, her voice low. "Not from the very beginning." There was a distant quality to her tone, as if she were speaking about someone else's life. It was clear she knew more than she was willing to admit outright. Trent leaned forward, gently shifting the conversation toward Adam's startling claims, his insistence that he had seen his father alive. This time, Rosalie paused. Her eyes drifted toward the window as if she were replaying something in her mind. "Adam has an imagination," she said softly. "But sometimes I wonder if he's just seeing what I'm too afraid to believe." That admission cracked something open. Encouraged by her uncertainty, Trent asked her to explain. What followed was a hesitant, painful confession. Joseph had died during an intimate moment between them, a situation that left her shaken and deeply uncomfortable. It was the reason she had refused an open casket, and perhaps why she'd struggled so much to discuss the circumstances with others. Trent absorbed the revelation with a quiet gravity. Her story, though intimate and tragic, didn't fully explain the missing certificate or the boy's vivid sightings. It only deepened the mystery and cast a more emotional light on Rosalie's guarded behavior. Before he could ask more, a sharp knock interrupted them. Rosalie walked to the door, her face tense. The door swung open and there stood Adam, breathless, his cheeks flushed from running. His voice cut through the room like a spark. "I saw him again, officer. I really did," the boy said, eyes wide with urgency. He described, in startling detail, 2 encounters. Once near the old playground, and again at the mall, just a day before the funeral. Trent listened carefully, noting every word. Adam wasn't vague or dreamy in his storytelling. He remembered the color of the jacket, the way the man walked, the watch he wore. These weren't the fantasies of a grieving child. They were observations, precise and believable. The following day, Trent went to the mall himself. It was crowded, busy with the weekend rush. He moved slowly through the halls, scanning every face, every silhouette. And then, he saw him. A man with the same build, same walk, an uncanny resemblance to Joseph. Trent's heart kicked hard in his chest. He followed cautiously, watching as the man browsed in a bookstore, then stopped for coffee. But what caught Trent off guard was the man's visit to a lingerie shop, a departure from the habits he knew of Joseph. The man's movements were deliberate, but nervous, his eyes scanning his surroundings with the kind of alertness that suggested he was used to watching his back. Trent followed him as he exited the mall and made his way through quiet residential streets. Eventually, the man entered a modest, unassuming house. From his car, Trent watched and took notes: house number, layout, surrounding details. Every part of the man's demeanor screamed caution. Something wasn't right. This was no longer about a child's statement or a missing certificate. This was a living thread tied to the truth. That night, back at the station, Trent compiled everything: photographs of the man, Adam's testimony, and the lingering inconsistencies around Joseph's death. With this, he approached a judge and requested an exhumation of Joseph's body. To his surprise, the judge agreed. At the cemetery, under a gray sky, and with machinery rumbling in the background, preparations began. But just as the team got to work, Rosalie appeared. Her face was pale, and tears glistened in her eyes as she begged Trent to stop. "This is disturbing his peace," she cried. "I've told you everything. What more do you need?" Despite Rosalie's desperate pleas, the evidence was too strong for Officer Trent to ignore. But when she asked him to confront the man before exhuming Joseph's grave, Trent agreed. At the man's house, he met Alex, who looked exactly like Joseph but denied knowing him. Suspicious, Trent brought him in for questioning. At the station, Alex remained confused and insistent that he had no connection to Joseph or Rosalie. Then Rosalie entered the room and broke down in his arms. The emotional weight of the moment was undeniable. Still unsure, Trent ordered a DNA test. The results revealed the shocking truth. Alex wasn't Joseph, but Joseph's long-lost twin, separated at birth and unaware of each other's existence. Rosalie remembered that Joseph had been adopted, confirming the possibility of a sibling. With the truth uncovered, the exhumation was called off. Joseph was indeed gone, but the investigation had uncovered something unexpected: family. In the aftermath, Rosalie and Alex slowly formed a bond. Adam, too, warmed to the man who resembled his father. Together, they began healing. Trent closed the case, not with a crime solved, but with a family restored.